Hello, welcome to our TED Talk class. Today we will speak about space, about colonization, the Mars, and all these things. But the topic sounds like the real future of space exploration. And let's start from the speaker's person. Who knows his biography or something about him? I just read a small text bio on the TED.com. And from his speech, I got that he's a kind of engineer, kind of designer of these aircrafts, and looks like he is very knowledgeable guy. He knows a lot about these flying airplanes and so on. But it's what I know, and I found that he's kind of negative. So what was his talk about? Jart, can you start, please?
Yes. Summarizing, he says that the future of space exploration is related with private companies like his, because the NASA don't want to spend much money. If you compare the rate starting from the 60s, that they spend a lot of money and resources for space exploration. Nowadays we spend a few money, and this man he has a company. He's working with and I think Richard Branson, the owner of Vision. They want to create a space travel and for wealthy people, and that will help to create new discoveries related to space exploration. So I think that's when he says the real future of space exploration, that means private companies working on that.
Right. There are many lines, there are many ideas in his speech. Anything else, Vasants? Can you add something?
He even mentioned one thing, especially in the early 90s, I mean, the early 20th century, when Wright Brothers invented the airplane. Within the 4 years, we've improvised the aviation industry very quickly. But compared to the current situation, it was really, really fast. He said that we are lacking of improvisation or innovation in the aviation industry. He mentioned that fact. Yeah.
Right. And he spoke in kind of satirical way. He says that now people care about phones, not about space. Something like this. Jorgen, would you like to add something about talk? Any lines, ideas, what you like?
Yeah, I like his style. His smile, and his whiskers. Special.
A lot of jokes, and the audience loves him, obviously. Yes. Vasants, please.
I remember they even skipped that video. I don't know. They cut some portion from that video. Probably, I think he might made some political references at that time. I don't know.
But I don't think that they cut the scene. I got it like it was a joke, He started to how we call claiming President Bush and something, and then said, "Oh, I was instructed that I should not do that," and something like that. It was a joke, I think. But there are many lines in his talk, and one of them which I liked, it's those that Vasants mentioned about pilots, and he said that after a long period of adaptation, this technology, in 4 years we get thousands of pilots. So 4 years ago it was 12 pilots in the Earth, and 4 years after we have thousands of pilots who who drive these aircrafts. So it was like a blast. The technology is ready, and it's it's delivered instantly to the Earth. And he asking why it doesn't happen with space. We visited space 50 years ago. And still have nothing. And in fact, he said, in fact, we not even don't progress. We regressing in these technologies each year, more and more. We we are losing our motivation. We're losing technologies, and we regressing. So there are some things what we can do 50 years ago, but cannot do now. And how it's possible, and why? I don't know. Should we believe that or not? And I have some doubts. I think that he exaggerated a little bit some things, but in general, it looks about right. I don't hear too much about moon visitors and so on. So, what do you think? Why we regress? Why we have regress in this field? Vasant, please.
I think we have a lot of automation these days. Our science focused on making robots and automations, and which which reduces the human effort or human work. So I think that made us lazy and not thinking about improvisation. We are regressing. I think that was one of the point, I think.
George?
We don't have motivation. So the US and the Soviet Union, they had a good motivation to show to the world that they were better than the other. So that was the main point. But now with this space program or space race cost a lot of money. So we need to find out ways to make a profit with this space race.
Yes, and he mentions that he said that NASA have a very limited budget now, and Russian Cosmos, how he said, starving now, and selling tickets to rich millionaires for these rockets. So it's true. I read many articles about Russian Roscosmos company which do that, and they have a limited budget too, and they always wimp about that. They don't have enough money, and they need more to progress. So it looks about right. And I think that this unique situation that space was a subject between Soviet Union and US, it was a good thing for space because it makes us to progress very quickly, touch the moon, go to the extra space, and so on. It was done in no time. Okay, so but there was some joke. I'm going to the question now. There was some jokes what I don't understand in this speech, and I wanted to ask you why he says that Al Gore invented the internet. I don't understand that. It was obviously a joke. Audience reacted to that, but I don't know. I think that Al Gore is some politicians, right? And what is special between him and internet? You don't know.
Al Gore ran for president against Bush. And in a speech he gave one time, so he was a presidential candidate. He lost because of something that happened in Florida, whose governor happened to be Bush's brother. So Gore lost his presidential bid. But he said in a speech one time that I invented the internet. So everyone knew he didn't. So that became kind of a national joke. Oh, Al Gore invented the internet. Don't you know? So it's a meme. It's a satirical meme.
I see. Well, okay. You need context to understand that. It sounds funny, and auditory reacted, but I did not get it. What's happening? Another probably cultural American question: what is a Frogger? And context for that was like when I had my first personal computer, all what I can do is do play with Frogger or something like that.
Okay, I know it. It's a game.
Oh,
It's a
Frogger?
game.
The frog.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a game.
some silly computer game. I
Yeah,
never even played it.
Very simple game. Very simple game.
Yes, and can you remember a line, an idea why he mentions it?
Because during the 80s, computers were used mainly to play video games.
Right. He said we used that for silly things, for playing, for children mostly. But then something happened, and computers are necessary for everyone now. And one of his points was let's motivate our children about space. Since we lost it for us, let's make our children dream about space. Let's motivate that, and probably it will help. Probably. And he provided a few historical examples. Nice one. When I forgot actually about what, but examples when all the scientists, all the innovators of some field were children when the technology were invented. So they got the technology from childhood. Jart, did you get that from the speech? I forgot about flying, maybe. Okay, let's go to the other one. Can you define what is capitalist space race? He mentioned it. He mentioned it many times. So what is different between communists, or I don't know what he thinks about. How it's different from previous way? He said we are going to the era of capitalist space race.
It sounds like he's talking about tourism.
Hmm.
Instead of doing it for science, we're doing it for the masses to make a profit. So we're, whoever builds the bigger tourist attraction in space, I think that's what he means by capitalist space race.
Well, sounds about right, because she mentioned many times that when you will be able to buy a ticket to the moon holiday, it will take a new urge for space exploration. Because how we call it? When people want something, the commercial tries to satisfy these demands, and it creates new industry, creates new research, and so on. So it was another point for children. Let's motivate children, tell them more about space, and so on. I got it in this way. Okay, another one. More complicated. Should we really invest on space program, especially the ones that searching for aliens? Jürgen, what do you think? Should we search the aliens?
Should we really invest on space programs? Searching for aliens? No, I don't think so.
In fact, Stephen Hawkins says we should not be searching for aliens because they may be evil. Which could be true. You never know.
I think it's two different questions. First of all, we very in this time we depend on our space technologies. We use this global positioning system. We use internet. We related to many things on our orbit. So we should use space. We should continue that programs. But should we go further in the space to reach another galactics and so on? I don't think so. It's better stay here until we get, I don't know, more power or something. Jart, what do you think?
I think it's interesting because during space programs, many interesting inventions have been done. During the Apollo program, they made many discoveries. Thanks to that, it's not that just they went to the moon, but many discoveries were done, and we are taking profit of that. So one of them was the CD technology. It was made during this period.
Mm-hmm. So when we are trying to develop our science, we cannot develop only one narrow technology. We should have some basement, and it's somehow what's the word for that? Run all the science forward, right? When you started to achieve something new. Mm-hmm. But I cannot remember. I can't recall anything. What we get from the space company, you know.
Velcro was one thing.
What is it?
You know Velcro?
The
Velcro attachment, that came from the space program because astronauts had big, clumsy gloves and they couldn't do buttons. So they came up with Velcro to open and close seals. So that's the only one I can remember. I think maybe super glue, but I'm not sure.
There is a famous joke about pen and pencil. Do you know that?
Yeah, you told me, but the other people may not. You can repeat it.
I think everyone knows because it's very old. It is, you know, when this competition between Soviet Union and US in space took place, the astronauts have to write something on the paper, and Americans spent a lot of money to develop a pen that can write without gravity. And Russian used pencils for that. Actually, it's not true story. It's a myth, as far as I know, but it's a funny joke. Sounds, please.
Yes, I hear that in space we cannot use pencils because the nib can be broken and it will cause a damage with any electrical system, or it can even go through into your nose, the astronaut's nose. So it is not a good thing. It's not a good idea.
I don't know actually, but I just hear that. I forgot. I looked some TV program, and they speak it a lot about this joke. It was something like Mythbusters, and said it does not take place in real life. So.
Yeah.
But sounds funny. Sounds funny. I would like it. So, what is supersonic flights? Who knows?
Supersonic flights. So are planes who overtake the speed of sound.
Right. And there are, as far as I know, there are only few types of planes who can fly so fast, and mostly because there is no reason for that. It's very rare when we need this space.
But we had one, and now it's one. You know, the Concorde.
Right.
Was a big
we have a Russian one, and we have it before the Concorde, but it was closing because of I don't know. It's they didn't find profit in that, so they closed the program. And the speaker provided the analogy between supersonic flights and spaceships. Because before that we have these spaceships. We can go to the moon. We proved that, but there is no profit in that. So it's the reason why we close that. So do you agree? Disagree? What do you think about this analogy? Sounds?
Could you please repeat that question, please?
So speaker made an analogy. He compared these supersonic flights and spaceships. He said, we can do that. We proved that we can. And we built the prototype. But we just don't need that because there are no real tasks for that ships. And that's why Russian supersonic ships were closed. And it looks like the same happening with the spaceships. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I think because there's no one to prove that we are capable of this much. So for who we are going to prove? So there's no need for that. So yes, it's a waste of time and resource. Yeah, I think.
Gerard?
The speaker told us that commercial planes are as faster as now well, the ones we have nowadays. So there is no real progress. And regarding supersonic planes, maybe the cost of those flights would be too expensive. That's the reason that they gave up Concorde flights.
What I heard about Concorde, that they have problem with selling tickets. You know, only few people need the speed. So if you have two business meetings, one in Chicago and next one in Australia in one day, probably you can use Skype for that. I think. Well, Teacher Lee, no?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, in the old days before we had teleconferencing, if you had to get to a meeting in 2 hours, then supersonic speed would get you there quickly. But now that we can do video conference, it's insane to spend that much money, especially if the CEO wants first class. It's not economically feasible for a company. It's wasteful.
Right, and it was his point. It was the speaker's point about, about spaceships, that we can do it, but there is no real goals for that. So it's something like that.
It's like our space shuttle fleet. A lot of times, all they did was they took food to the space station and brought trash back. We call that a milk run. It's like the milkman delivering milk to your door every day. It's routine. It's not a critical achievement. It's like mundane. It's a waste of money and technology to spend millions just to deliver milk to the space station.
But they need fresh milk. What can we do?
But there's no value. There's no benefit. Now if the space station was generating some product that was being sold for profit that justified that expense, that would be okay. But they're just doing experiments. They're growing plants and bacteria in space just to see what happens. There's no research, no medical benefit. They're just trial and error, playing around like Frogger. What can we do today, Let's try this. It has no value. There's no goal. There's no long-term benefit. That's why it's failing.
But speaking about long term, we don't know about long term. We think that in short terms it's useless, right? But we don't know. Maybe it's a basement for future, I don't know, real achievements. So we have to do this long and stupid and boring period of doing nothing. But then something happen and we will have basement for our future flights, maybe something like this. And it was one of my questions, and let me read it again. Don't you think that NASA, Roscosmos, it's a Russian company, and others now do groundwork that will allow such a guy to be a Captain Kirk? And I got Captain Kirk from this comments to TED Talk. Many people call the speaker Captain Kirk. I don't know why. Who's that?
Star Trek. He is the Captain Kirk. Okay. Star Trek. If you don't know Star Trek, you've been dead. Okay, for the past 30 years. Star Trek was a science fiction TV show that started back in the 60s. It only ran for 3 years. It was intelligent. It was high tech. It was the first time that a black woman played an intelligent person on TV, Uhura, the communicator. It was the first TV show to have a bridge crew that was Japanese, Russian, African, American, alien. It was diversity in the ideal. And in that TV show, the future was optimistic. The earth was at peace. Prosperity was everywhere. People didn't work. They just enjoyed life, except for the military that had missions to do. It was a very optimistic, wonderful, beautiful future. So the Star Trek phenomenon took over. It became very popular. 30 years later, they made a movie of Star Trek and it became popular. So now we've had probably 7 or 8 different Star Trek TV series, 20 or 30 Star Trek movies. Everyone in America grew up with Star Trek every day of our lives for 60 years. Captain Kirk was the original starship commander. He took the Enterprise spaceship into space to explore the unknown, to meet new alien races, first contact, to fight the enemy races out there like the Klingons and the Romulans. So Captain Kirk is the embodiment of the ultimate military commander.
I see. So it's a good compliment then, right?
A good compliment, yeah.
Okay. But in comment, many in the comment sections of the TED Talk, there are many skeptical comments like, look at this guy. He doesn't care about money. He doesn't care about anything. He just wants to be a Captain Kirk. All the humankind must to build a ship for him. Something like that. So they reference that about goals, so that we don't have goals or something like this. And back to my questions. So don't you think that NASA and Roscosmos now do a groundwork that will allow us such a flights in future? So I'm referring to this period of aviation, of flights, of usual flights. Sometimes we need to stop, find a new technology, accumulate statistics, find weak place, and then go to the stars. So in my opinion, it's what's happening now. What do you think? Is it true or not? Gerard, please.
I think we are stagnant, you know. It's not, I don't see real progress related to space explorations, because this conference was made 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
One thing he said, the speaker, he talked about mobile phones. And now, you know, we know the importance of mobile phones, but the importance of space exploration, I think it hasn't changed since the speaker made this speech.
Well, what I heard about current space launchers, how we call it, launches, that there are less launches that we want to. I mean that we have more cargo to deliver that we can. Many companies want to have their how we call it, their Sputniks. I forgot the English name for Sputnik. They satellites on the orbit. Many companies want to have their satellites on the orbit, but it's cost too much, and there is a big queue for that, and they have to wait for years for that. But in the same time, they don't want to pay extra, and because it's already too expensive. It's already too expensive. It's speaker said that it costs a few millions to buy tickets for Russian space, for Russian shuttle. So it's it's too much. So the company prefer to keep waiting. And the speaker said that when this price will lower, it will change everything in a moment. We will have launches every day. We will have a lot of them. We will have space travel and so on. So, but I don't think that Russian Roscosmos have this price without reason. I think that it's a limitation of current technologies or something like that. And I can't believe that no one works on that. Elon Musk and others trying to make launches cheaper, if I understand right. So maybe it will happen, you know, in next year. If Elon Musk find a way to reuse these launches, these rockets.
He's already found a way. He can reuse the first stage, and he can reuse the space capsule that carries astronauts. So he's already proven that he can reuse 2 of the 3 major components. That will save a lot of money.
We think so, but it's not a public company. So there are many people. Private. There are many people who believes in Elon Musk. There are many people who have skeptical minds about him, and I should admit, many Russian scientists don't trust him too much. They say that he doing very good things, but commercially he isn't profitable now, so something like that. And they say that it can fail. All this business can fail because of money. I don't know whom to believe, but it sounds like it can be different opportunities for that. So how much should cost the ticket for us? So how much should cost the ticket to you that you go to the space, that you consider that option?
Well, it's based on numbers. If you carry only 2 passengers, it's going to be extremely expensive. If you can build something like an airplane and carry 100 people into space, it's going to be cheaper. But we don't have the technology yet to put 100 people into space. We can carry 7 astronauts. That's it. So
right, but
no crew, there's no passengers.
But teacher Lee, we already have passengers in Russian ships. You know, some Japanese milliardaires pay us to fly to the ES and back. But it's too much now. It's a few. Yes, it's a few. Only few. How we call it? Travelers. Only few tourists. And
Right.
because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
And I think how much it. What is the. You know, visiting the space can be a huge event in your life, right? Only few people can do that, and if the price will lower, the many people will try to do that. So, not millions, but thousands of dollars can be an affordable price for many people, right? And it can be a new field for business. Vasant, please.
But prior to that, they have to maintain a good statistic of bringing the passengers alive to the Earth. So,
To the space or back?
yeah, back. Back.
I'm just joking. So, as far as I understand, it's not a problem to get them to the space. The problem is get them back. And I know that. Please, Gerard.
So, which insurance company would insure that? You know, those travels, or would the government allow that? You know, I don't know whether a company can do that the space travels without, if they don't need the permission of the government, or I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't think that there is a place for government. You know, the space is commonplace. So we probably, if we will have launch every day, we need some organization to manage that, just to prevent, you know, collides or something like that. But now it doesn't exist because we don't have to. Teacher Lee, what do you think?
This was an issue that came up in America when SpaceX first started to launch a spaceship. They said, well, we're the first private company to launch a rocket into space, and there's no laws. There was nothing that said NASA controls all space travel. So they said, do we need NASA's permission to launch a rocket into space? Well, it's not written down, so probably not, but as a courtesy, they asked NASA's permission to launch a rocket into space. But it was a courtesy. There's no law. So like you're saying, right now, anybody can launch a rocket into space, I guess. There's no laws to control that yet. So that's something that governments are going to have to figure out and control at some point. Because it's like in the movie Gravity, right? In the movie Gravity, remember what happened? For some reason, the Russians destroyed a satellite in space. It didn't say why, but that debris caused a catastrophe in space. If you let anybody launch a rocket into space and it doesn't meet some kind of quality control, or the company's not stupid, they can cause chaos up there. They can cause billions of dollars in damage. So at some point, we're going to have to control who goes into space and make sure they're responsible and capable and reputable. And we can trust them not to make a mess.
Right. It's a good point. Because these satellites cost too much. They are really expensive, and if anyone can damage your satellite, you will pay, I think, to any government which provide you some defense. It will be easy. Gerard?
It's like with people who has a private plane, they need to ask permissions to get a flight and everything. So it should be the same. We are related in space. Some control, you know.
There is some control, but I think it's kind of complicated. It's not international. You know, you asking the country which you flying off on, how to say, flying through about this space or something like that. But I have another story about that. Do you know what is crowdcrafting or something like that? I'm not sure in spelling, but I try to.
Crowdcrafting.
It's a way when some scientists or some, I don't know, businessmen want to do project but don't have money of that. So he writes his project on the internet, on the special site, and he asks, let's, you know, pay for $5 each, and I will do that. And in the last year, if I remember it right, the group of scientists start a project to start a private rocket, a small one, private rocket to the moon to check if Americans be there or not. to find yes, to find the American flag or something, I don't know, to make a photo or something like that. And they built the rocket. They built a small, I don't know, device that just make a photo and even could not move. As far as I understand, but something went wrong. Something went wrong, and this rocket did not reach the moon. It started, but did not reach the moon. But as I understand, they did not have to, you know, notify any government, any control center about that. They just build it and launch without any permission. It's what I know. But maybe in future we have to invent some, I don't know, some United Nations committee or something like this. Teacher Lee, please.
It's like everything else in humanity's life. Space travel is happening now, but we don't yet, it's so new, we don't have laws to regulate it. What's going to happen is we're going to have some disaster, and then the governments are going to say, gee, we need laws to regulate this. You know, we always wait until too late and people get killed and disasters happen to say, gee, we should have had laws to control that. We need to be doing that now, not 10 years from now. But we're not, because the cost, I guess, or just short-sighted, stupid politicians.
Well, it's hard to predict all the things that may happen, you know. Maybe we should control everything, maybe we don't. So it's easy to go off way action and reaction. Something happen and we react to that. Something like that.
And I think that space control needs to be multinational, because space is not owned by anybody. If I have a U.S. space control and a Russian space control and a Spanish space control, they're going to have their own individual interests, and they're going to conflict, because space affects the world. Multinational space control agency that's independent of politics.
Yes, but we cannot reach that on, you know, on the Earth yet. And it's a good segue to the next question.
Yeah.
Let me find it. And I got this question from the comments too, and I lost it now. Just a second. It was like something like that. Do we really need a space program before setting down things on the Earth? The commenter said we have so many bad things on the Earth that even if we colonize the Mars, we'll just bring all this trash to the Mars. So it will be, I don't know, just an example, Russian colony and American colony and a border between them and some kind of military race against them, and it will continue and continue, you know, something like that. So before we start the colonization, before we start space exploration, we have to find a peace on the Earth. It was not my by one commenter's point. Do you think it's possible? Asans, what do you think? Is it right idea? Is it possible?
I don't think it's possible, because considering today's scenario between countries like North Korea and Middle East countries, so it is not possible to keep a peace on Earth. But that is necessary. But we should have done that before. Because instead of investing money on space programs, finding another galaxy or another planet to habitate, but why don't you just look at our own Earth and rebuild or renovate it, make it beautiful to live with peaceful mind. So we should have done that.
I agree that renovation of some desert on the Earth, it can be less expensive than colonization of Mars. But we cannot even start that, right? We can't even settle down the thing on the Earth. So maybe it's too early for Mars colonization. I don't know, actually, but I'm afraid of this idea. I'm afraid of this idea that on the Mars we will have these country zones, you know, and some borders between them, and some stupid politician will decide how to interact between them. I hate this idea.
I believe that colonization ought to be, again, multinational. Everybody owns Mars. Everybody shares in the mineral, you know, it needs to be single country, if you will. Single country, single language, single goal, single beliefs. If you let it become like Earth, it's just going to be a mess, and eventually Earth and Mars will go to war and kill each other.
But it's what's it's likely to happen? Likely to happen, because you said one language. What kind of language? English? I don't know if Chinese will agree. And you know, it can be a money questions again. For instance, I don't know exactly. I just guess. For instance, that Sweden don't launch too much rocket. You know, don't put too much money to space exploration. So America can ask them, why we should share Mars with you if you put nothing in that, for instance. Mm-hmm. Or let's choose another country. I don't know, something like Ethiopia. Ethiopia don't have space program, so why we should provide them a piece of Mars?
Mm-hmm. A good point. A good point. But see, no one's thinking about that right now. No one's thinking about that. We should be thinking about that now, because it's happening now, you know.
And I can find the good way even in my mind. I don't understand how to reach that. What will be a good solution? And should we choose planets? You know, just like Mars for Americans and Venera for Russians. But it will be a war when we will choose. Because one planet is better than other. Yes, right.
You know, when we colonize, we've got to stop thinking country governments and think planet governments. And like you're saying, Ivan, we don't have any experience in a single government for everybody, and that's going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I think there has been some improvement since First and Second World Wars. You know, there were conflicts between European countries, and nowadays European countries are in good terms with each other. So I think in the future, all the countries of the world will be in good terms as well. I think these conflicts we have nowadays with Middle East and North Korea will end, and in the future will be the same situation than the one we have in Europe. So then we can talk about planetary unity when we go to another planet.
Well, I would like to think so, but it sounds too positive to me. I think it already took thousands of years to unite the Europe. You know, it's not centuries; it's thousands of years, and it started from. We don't have any written sources from such time, from that times, and it took so many times. So how many times it will take to unite the Earth? I think it never happened.
Not that much.
But in the same time, I do believe that space exploration it's a future. It's not a distant future. It's a 10 years maybe I don't know exactly, but it looks like it's almost there. And we will have to manage that with the current situation. You know, with maybe China's Astra fleet will make something on Mars, South Korean Sea, making you. I wanted to make a joke, but forgot the name for that. So on China territory on Mars, they will do artificial islands, and Americans will be against that. So it's very possible. And there are many countries that don't have any access to space, and I don't believe that it will be provided to them. I just can't imagine that.
It's too expensive. Only big countries with large economies can afford it.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's impossible that Elon Musk will build a new ship and say, okay, now any Middle East country can use that for free to colonize something. It's just impossible. So it's probably what Speaker means talking about a new capitalist era of cosmos exploration, of space exploration. So we should think about space exploration in terms of money. We should find profit. We should make balance and so on. Okay. Another question what we have. What did make us less innovative in the aviation field? Jürgen, what do you think? Why we less innovative now in the aviation field?
Sooner or later, there is limits, I guess. But no.
And we reached that, right?
Sorry?
And we reached that limit, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gerard, please.
We answered this question more or less at the beginning of the class. Look what's happening with nowadays flights. They are as fast as the ones 50 years ago. So why don't we have faster flights? Because the cost is too high. But what we now have, I think it's good that regular people can buy a ticket and fly, especially inside Europe. We can get flights, very cheap flights. Everybody can fly nowadays. That's some improvement.
Well, I wouldn't call it cheap, but maybe I biased because I live, in the center of Russia, in the middle of Russia. I have to fly a lot in any direction, so that's why my ticket's always expensive. But if I can choose, and people ask me, what do you want? Faster flight and more expensive, or cheaper tickets and slow flight? I would choose second. I would like to pay less and spend more time for that. But as far as I know, there are no such offers. So no one work in this direction. No one provides cheap, slow planes. It can be a direction for research, I think. Vasant?
Yes, when Wright Brothers invented the airplanes, and within that 4 years, they made a quick improvisation because they were so enthusiastic about the airplanes at that time. So they made a lot of improvisation uh, without thinking about any consequences. But now we have gained this generation. We have gained a lot of experience from different fields, and we are so skeptical about making mistakes. So that's why we are hesitating, I think. I don't know.
Okay, and good continuation for the question. Do you think that our process of innovation reduced in just one field, or it's in general for our humankind, for our societies? What do you think? Jürgen, do you feel that we have a lot of innovations recently?
No, can't remember special.
The obvious example, we have a good phones with good cameras,
Yes, powerful.
with good batteries. I can say it's good, but it's better than before. So, but I can't name too much inventions. Probably we reached some limit of our, I don't know, abilities.
Well, in the 50 years ago, science fiction writers wrote about flying cars. We're nowhere near producing flying cars. No one's even thinking about flying cars, really, making them commercially available. We're just struggling with gas cars and electric cars. So we're not looking towards the future to cheaper, faster, more efficient transportation. We're still using individual cars, cluttering the highways and making pollution. We're not innovating in car travel. We should have the technology to make things better, but we're not. I don't know why.
It looks like there is no demand for that. Gerard, please.
And besides, do you remember the film 2001: Space Odyssey? That C.C. Clarke novel, and so in 2001 we should be in this film. They are traveling to Jupiter. So now we haven't gone farther than our orbit. Well, the farther we have, we are in the same place than in the 50s. The moon is our further achievement. So the space exploration it was too optimistic at this time. It looks it will take centuries to travel between stars. We need the technology is not good enough.
Right. And I'm never sure if we can count moon as our achievement, Just putting the flag, it's not enough. We don't have hotels on the moon. We don't have regular races. So it's just throwing the stone in the window and say that, we now reached that. Vasant, please.
Yes, I think we are keeping a good pace in term of innovation, but we are spending it in a different, how do you call it, in a wrong way, I think, because instead of investing in what is necessary to the human beings, like agriculture, because a decade, I think many decades ago, Indian scientists made how do you call it? They introduced a term like green revolution. It's about using fertilizers and a lot of different how do you know? I don't know the name of that fertilizers, I think, and so chemical fertilizers to improve the cultivation and anything. But on the other hand, we are unknowingly poisoning the earth by using those chemical fertilizers. So we are doing some we are doing some innovations, but it still affects the earth. So we didn't We didn't. We are not going in a right way.
So sometimes we make wrong steps in our innovations. It's have some take backs. What's the word for that? Literally, when something beat you back, how we call it? Like this example with fertilizer. We fertilize the earth, and then in few years it became unuseful. But when some backfires. Okay.
What's your example again?
So we use some chemical fertilizers for for some plants, and for a few years the land became too bad, too poor, too bad, something like this. So it is strike us bad or something. Side effects. Okay.
Side effects, drawbacks, long-term harm.
Okay, and our time is almost over, but we covered a lot of questions. Very proud of that. And I hope to see you all tomorrow on our movie class, because the movie is not simple. We have a lot of things to ask you.
It's an interesting movie, yes.
So thank you for coming, and see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.